Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America.
All right, hour 2, Sean Hannity Show, toll free. Let me give you our number. It's 800-941-SEAN. If you can be a part of the program, don't forget the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is going to join us on Hannity tonight. A lot to talk about regarding him as new Speaker. Here he is yesterday talking about how the People's House is back in business.
It's the beauty of America that allows earlier today. Beautiful country. It's the beauty of America that allows a firefighter's kid like me to come here and serve in this sacred chamber where great men and women have served before all of us and strive together to build and then preserve what Lincoln did refer to as the last best hope of man on earth. We stand at a very dangerous time. I'm stating the obvious. We all know that. The world is in turmoil. But a strong America is good for the entire world. I believe that each one of us has a huge responsibility today to use the gifts that God has given us to serve the extraordinary people of this great country, and they deserve it, and to ensure that our republic remains standing as the great beacon of light and hope and freedom in a world that desperately needs it. When our people are losing their faith in government, when they're losing sight of the principles that made us the greatest nation in the history of the world, I think we got to be mindful of that. We're going to fight. We're going to fight vigorously over our core principles because they're at odds a lot of times now in this modern era. We have to sacrifice sometimes our preferences because that's what's necessary in a legislative body. But we will defend our core principles to the end. We want our allies around the world to know that this body of lawmakers is reporting again to our duty stations. Let the enemies of freedom around the world hear us loud and clear. The People's House is back in business.
Well, I'm glad they're back in business. You know, one thing I didn't do, like so many other people, I didn't go, oh, the earth is falling. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I knew eventually they'd get there. They had to. I think the process was unnecessary. I don't like this rule where any one member can stop, all work in the House of Representatives and move forward with the motion to vacate. And when you have a small majority, I keep telling Republicans, nobody listens to me, but I tell them, you're going to win together or you're going to lose together. There's not going to be some winners and some losers. No, either the American people deem your leadership as successful or they view it as a failure. That's how it's going to be. Now, maybe they'll get a C instead of an F. I don't know. But the bottom line is whatever grade they get, they'll get it together. Anyway, our friend Congressman Byron Donalds is back on from Florida, who at one point late in the game became a potential speaker himself, which I would have been absolutely excited over. How are you, Mr. Donald, sir?
Doing good, Sean. How are you?
I think you would have been a great speaker. But how did that process work out in your head? How did you like being part of that mess?
I mean, look, I don't view it that way. I view it as just trying to be a part of the solution. We obviously Kevin McCarthy got vacated. Steve Scalise didn't have the votes. Jim Jordan didn't have the votes. Tom Emmer didn't have the votes. And so, at that point, I think when Jim realized he didn't have the votes and he left, I decided with my team and my family to take a run at it, to take a shot at it. And it was really about just getting the House back to work, getting us organized, and then figuring out strategically how we're going to get our border secured, which we know the White House doesn't want to do, and we know Senate Democrats don't want to do, but we have to find a way to make it happen nonetheless. But look, Mike Johnson is going to be a great Speaker of the House. Mike and I, we've known each other for the past year, got a chance to know him more through this Congress. And Sean, I'm going to tell you, the man is he's a man of deep faith. Everybody knows that, of impeccable character. And I think that right now with where the House is, there's a lot of trust that has to be rebuilt between the members. And I think that the Speaker is going to be able to do that.
Now, you see all the attacks coming his way. I'll see him tonight. I've got to believe he's got to know that this is coming. What do you make of, well, you said this 20 years ago about gay marriage and everything else in between. What would your advice be to him in terms of how to handle that? My
advice would be, listen, you said what you said, you own it. but that's not what matters to the American people. Pulling up clips of something he said in an interview 2 decades ago has nothing to do with the price of food and the price of gas in the United States. It has nothing to do with the fact that almost 200,000 Americans have been killed by fentanyl overdoses because of Joe Biden's reckless policy. It has nothing to do with the fact that Joe Biden, under his watch, we have now evacuated 5 U.S. embassies around the globe, and our greatest ally in the region is under attack by the Iranian-backed Hamas. That's got nothing to do with it. And so I would say, yeah, I said that, but the only people bringing that up are the Democrats who are trying to cover for the fact that they have run a terrible set of policies, which is hurting every American and is hurting us across the globe.
Well, that's a great answer. I hope he's listening to the show. I'd take that verbatim and say, Byron Donalds gave me some good advice today. You know, I guess what frustrated me, and I do understand the quote group of 8 that wanted to vacate Kevin McCarthy, and they were specifically, you know, annoyed at the budget agreement that he had made. I believe it was back in May, and they didn't want that to happen this time, and they wanted to return to regular order, which I'm a supporter of, which means you go through the appropriations process, you get it done and get it done on time. The House had only completed 4 of the 12 appropriations bills. However, there was a bridge that was built by you and Congressman Chip Roy, who's going to join us later in the program also today, that I thought was a really, really smart solution. And the first part of it was, it was one of 2 solutions you brought forward, was an 8% across the board cut, with exceptions for the military, veterans, et cetera, increasing funding to secure our border, and then you would have given, you know, it's rather than what we call a clean CR, where they get to continue spending at the levels that brought us $2 trillion in debt last year. That would have bought enough time to finish the appropriations process. It would have saved money in the meantime. It would have secured our borders in the meantime. And then we could have been at the point where the 8 said they wanted to be, which is with the appropriations bills passed. I thought that was a great solution. Why did that not work?
Well, 2 things. One, I think it didn't work because at the end of the day, you know, you had members who said very clearly that they would never support a continuing resolution. We tried to have that debate, and they got locked into their position, and they weren't willing to change it. I think the other piece is, you know, for them, they didn't trust that Kevin would continue doing the work on the appropriation bills, and they viewed it as all you're going to do is set up this train where we're going to end up in an omnibus package. Now, I disagreed with that because I had been working with the more moderate members in our conference to help them understand what was going to be the state of play, what was going to be the workflow we were going to need to do in order to avoid an omnibus, because I'm not supporting an omnibus bill, Sean. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not going to do it. I'm not even going to support minibuses. Not going to do that either. If for people listening, a minibus is where they take 2 or 3 appropriation bills, they put them together. They call those minibuses up here. So I wouldn't support that either. But you needed the time in order to complete the work. And so that was really the strategy that we were trying to unfold. I think if that would have passed, we would have been in a significantly better position against the Senate. Because, Sean, look what's happening now. While we were looking for a speaker, finally we have one in Mike Johnson, but while we were doing that, the Senate has done nothing. They've done no work the last 3 weeks. They've not moved an appropriations bill. They've not renamed a post office, Sean. The Senate has been doing nothing. So we need to understand very clearly in the House, we got to be supportive of Mike Johnson. We need to stand behind him firmly. We have to come out with our bills, and we have to stand squarely looking at the Senate and say that they need to get back to work, because we're not just going to do, in my view, CRs into infinitum, and we're not.
But you're about to come up against the deadline. What, in about 20 days?
Yeah, in about 20 days. That's right. And I think we have an aggressive calendar that's already come out. We can get our work done, but the Senate's got to start working. And so is there going to be some resolution that might come forward? Yeah, it's very, very possible. Now, we're going to have to evaluate what that is. I think you have to tactically make a decision on what that looks like, depending on how much work we can accomplish and how much work the Senate accomplishes over the next 15 days.
Well, what if we come up in the next 15 days, 20 days, with another, oh my God, the sky is falling, the government's about to shut down. If we don't pass a CR, do we go back to the Byron Donalds, Chip Roy plan?
It's possible. And honestly, Sean, I won't really know till probably about 10 days out, maybe 5 days out. But look, we passed.
Well, do me a favor. The minute you know, will you please call and tell this audience? Because we'd like to know, too.
I will. But look, let me tell you, Sean, we passed 70% of the funding of the federal government in military construction and veteran affairs, homeland security, state and foreign ops, which, by the way, is one of the best state and foreign ops bills has passed the House. They haven't passed one in about a decade. And then the Department of Defense appropriations. That's 70% of the federal government. The Senate hasn't even passed those bills, Sean, not off the Senate floor. We could get that work done over the next 10 days. Then you'll be left with 30% of the government. This is what I'm saying. Depending on how our workflow goes over the next 10 to 20 days is going to determine a lot of what that package looks like in the end.
All right, quick break. More with Florida Congressman Byron Donalds, and we'll get to your calls. All right, we continue now with Republican Congressman Byron Donalds, who's with us. What I want to see unfold is the pressure get removed from your chamber. You guys do your work. Then they have to work off what you send them, and then you'll head into conference because they probably will butcher it to death, and they'll want to go along probably with Joe Biden and the administration, and they'll want to tie all of this into one big omnibus bill, and the House, you don't have a big margin. Is the House going to be strong and stand as one and say, no, we're not supporting that, and at that point let the Democrats shut the government down?
Look, what I've told to some of my Freedom Caucus members.
And let me add one thing. Mitch McConnell agreed to these numbers.
Yeah, but the Senate's already gone over the numbers. So, my position now for House members is we have to stand united behind Mike Johnson. We have to do that right now. If we do that and start passing our bills, it will be a clear message to the Senate and to the White House that the House is united. We're not playing these games. We're going to cut spending. We're going to do it responsibly. And then the last piece of this, Sean, which is the most critical piece, we are going to secure the southern border. The House is basically, we are committed that we're not going to take that supplemental in one package. We're going to split them into pieces. I think you hold Ukraine. You don't do anything with that right now. Is the Israel package? We move that one, send it back to the Senate. I think we could do some disaster recovery stuff with it. Do those two things. Send that back to the Senate. And the Senate's going to be like, well, what about Ukraine? And we're going to look at them and say, Israel is our greatest ally, not just in the region. They're probably our greatest ally in the world. We're going to take care of our friends first. Let's get that business done. Then when you go to Ukraine, the Ukraine number is $60 billion. We got to pay for that. Joe Biden has his Green New Deal package that might cost us $1 trillion or $2 trillion. No, Joe, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You're going to have to pay for Ukraine. We're not going to go to the treasury markets and borrow more money because it's getting harder for Janet Yellen to borrow money anyway. It's getting more expensive for us. We got to realize that and understand that. So you got to pay for this. You can't just go borrow it and send it into Ukraine. But let me be very clear. Our members, the majority of House Republicans, are not interested in more money for Ukraine while the southern border is wide open. If Joe Biden wants Ukrainian aid, then he needs to secure the southern border. It's that simple.
He needs to secure the border, get aid to Israel. Are you going to take them all up individually?
Yeah, they need to come up individually.
I tend to agree with you.
That's how the Democrats always drop a bunch of slimy stuff into these packages. Like you brought up the aid for Palestinian relief. We all know Hamas is going to take that money and they're going to put it into bullets and they're going to put it into missiles, and the Palestinian people won't see a dime of it.
Well, you know that. I know that. Clearly, Joe Biden doesn't know that, and that's become a top priority for him. You know, the one thing that if everybody understood this in the Republican conference, and they all embrace the fact that they win or lose together, I think you agree with me that there's not going to be some winners and some losers. If they just did these things, these very simple things, that they would be viewed as successful by the American people. And then all the pressure about either shutting down the government or, budget deficits and record debt, that would then go. The blame would then go to the people that are pushing for it. And to me, that seems like a winning political agenda for the Republicans.
I totally agree. And I think, Sean, the reason why we can do that is because Joe Biden has no control over the bully pulpit. Like I've been telling my colleagues this for about 6-7 weeks. Joe Biden has no control over the bully pulpit. His team at the White House don't even want him at the microphones. They play the elevator music to get him to stop talking, Sean. That's what's happening with the president. The other countries around the world are just telling the president of the United States, nah, man, I'm good. I'm not coming to meet with you. I'll talk to you later. This has not happened to our country before. So in this period of time where you have a president who is obviously weakened, from the House perspective, from the Republican perspective, this is the time to push hard to actually achieve the outcomes that the American people have been demanding out of this government, frankly, since Joe Biden became president, because the thing has been a disaster since he became president.
You know, I could see a day where one day I invite you on this program and introduce you as Speaker of the House, Byron Donalds. I could see that day. Just saying.
No, those days are gone. It is
that day. You've passed on that. All right. Anyway, Byron Donalds, appreciate you being with us, my friend.
Bold, inspired solutions for America. This is the Sean Hannity Show.